Welcome to my farming frustration made manifest, the Lightning Storm Werewolf. Tempest War finally dropped, and so too was I able to join the ranks of the Storm Druids. Now, if you're just here for the good bits, you can check out the description box below, which will hold all the time codes as well as a planner. Now, as we go on, you will have some gameplay here from the mid-40 dungeons I was running today. Just as a Lightning Storm Druid, nothing super fancy, just to give you an idea of how well it can do with all the aspects ready and roaring, but also just average gear, just 800, nothing super capped out, as well as not even max perfect stats or even 4 good stats. This is all just 3 statted gear, as I do not trade. So getting those pieces of perfection is quite troublesome and is entirely based on RNG. And when it comes down to enchanting or the rolling of the affixes, I haven't had much luck with that either. But my point is, you can get a lot better than what you are seeing right now, including glyph levels and the character levels themselves. There's a lot of power left to gain, and even so, I am able to just mindlessly run 40s and low 50s, give or take the affix, without too much of a problem, which is very, very promising, because a lot of people seem to stick with the Were NATO version of the build, which, if I am being honest, is probably better due to some unfortunate Diablo 4 inherent bugs that make Lightning Storm a little frustrating to play. But also, people are misjudging Lightning Storm right now because they don't understand how to do good single target damage. For example, the tapping technique, you see a little bit here on how that works, although I did charge it incorrectly. The tapping means you don't hold down the Lightning Storm once you have the appropriate amount of lightning strikes charged, and you just tap it, which allows you to increase the tick rate of Lightning Storm, allowing you to do a lot more single target damage. Now, if you also understand that Lightning Storm has a certain area it covers, and the more charges it has, the greater the area, which means if you keep it at 2 or 3 charges, your single target is much better because they can all hit the same target if it's a big enough boss. Or a world boss, you could just max charge it and all the strikes can hit the same target, which is incredible because each strike can hit and trigger several things, and your single target just kind of scales out of control. It still doesn't keep up with a fully ramped, unfortunate Were NATO, but you can maintain your charges in between packs if you do it correctly, and allowing you to have a lot more burst damage without having to recharge anything, while also being a screen away because you have infinite range. So let's talk a little bit about the gear and the aspects. Now, mind you, this is a guideline. I don't have any experience yet at level 100 with perfect gear, so perhaps what is best in slot might differ if I had the experience to make my decisions based on that. But this is what I have come up with based on my own testing, as well as cross-referencing with other builders and seeing what they think is best based on their personal preferences and experiences. But this is what I am pursuing myself. Tempest War is mandatory. Otherwise the build doesn't work, so you can't debate that. Vigorous aspect on the chest, with the stats being armor, because armor is one of the best defensive stats right now in the game. With damage reduction, it can work in tandem. Mighty Storm aspect in the gloves, which is a flex pick. You could choose a different capstone like Lupine or Perfect Storm, and this allows you to change the aspect here to maybe a Dark Howl if you want a more defensive approach or want to do PvP, or perhaps even an Inner Calm if you want to have more consistent damage. I prefer Earth and Might due to the guaranteed crit proc for 5 seconds, as well as the Spirit reset, but it's up to you, depending on how comfortable you are. Ranks of Lightning Storm, incredible damage up, critical strike chance, obviously, lucky hit chance is mandatory, get it where you can, and attack speed helps you trigger the proc rate faster if you are spamming the if you're doing the tapping technique. If you don't want to do the tapping technique on Lightning Storm, or you are expecting that it might be a bug and might be fixed, which is kind of what I am expecting as well, you can choose something else. Maybe you can go with let's see, where lightning critical strike damage, critical damage with werewolf skills. You have other sources of damage mods you can apply here. Hell, you might even just be able to do willpower if you want to. It doesn't really matter as long as it's a damage mod that is not wasted. In addition to the 3 mods you can see right now, those are mandatory in my opinion. Aspect of disobedience on the pants, with the same logic on the chest, armor, with damage reduction, you can work in tandem, or that can work in tandem with one another. Disobedience and aspect can, by the way, be, or vigorous aspect can be changed, by the way. They don't scale differently based on what piece of gear they are on. And they both work on pants, and they both work on the chest armor. Ghostwalker aspect in the boots, very self-explanatory. Get some movement speed, get some phasing, which is very, very lovely. Movement speed is the best stat on the in the game, really. Let's be real. Damage reduction while injured is very lovely. Kind of reminds me of Last Epoch. If you played the Druid there, you know what I mean. Total armor while in werewolf form speaks for itself. Fortify generation comes in handy due to our Grizzly Rage giving us Fortify. If you, however, don't want to do Fortify generation, you can go with an offensive stat or maybe take some dodge chance. But if you're looking for consistent damage reduction, your best chance is Fortify generation, as it will allow us to have a little bit more Fortify, ramps up a little bit more, just smooths it out a little bit. I do think it's the best option if you don't want to do damage. Overcharge aspect on the weapon, together with all stats, willpower, and vulnerable damage. Now, if you play Tornado, you might want to go close, but Lightning Strike can hit off screen or at the edge of your screen, so close is not always going to be the best option. So you can take critical strike damage. You can still take close damage because, you know, you will encounter a Butcher or a Lilith in due time. You can also go with, let's see, critical strike damage with werewolf skills, lightning critical strike damage. It depends entirely on what you want to do. As long as it's not a wasted mod, you are going to be perfectly fine. As long as you have all stats, which will smooth out some of the Paragon and gives you more willpower itself, which is, of course, your damage stat, and as well as vulnerable damage, which is one of the highest multiplicative damage sources we can add on our gear, because it's just insane. Direwolf aspect is going to be our amulet aspect, so it's going to get cranked up by 50%. Grizzly Rage now shapeshifts you into a dire werewolf, which is very, very important, as it allows us to become the werewolf we want to be. Get some movement speed as opposed to damage reduction. And then we also get a massive spirit cost reduction, and every kill we have heals us for 10% of our maximum life, which is very, very good. On top of that, we want cooldown reduction to keep the Grizzly Rage up. Ranks of Envenom, which is probably the most powerful passive we can get to get more damage. More armor speaks for itself, and damage reduction while fortified is pretty sweet. Any kind of damage reduction that functions most of the time is required here, because squish we are otherwise. Lightning Dancer, these are the little blue balls on the screen that you saw in the gameplay. Critical strike, lucky hit, vulnerable damage with some max life is what I would recommend on both of the rings. Lucky hit is mandatory, vulnerable damage is the strongest multiplicative damage we can add. Critical strike chance is just good, because the more crits we have, the better. Gives us more spirit, gives us more Lightning Dancer procs, gives us a bunch of good stuff. And then maximum life is probably one of the best defensive mods we can add on it. And we do the same thing on the other ring, but as opposed to Lightning Dancer on the second ring, we add aspect of the Rampaging Warbeast. Gives us a longer Grizzly Rage, as well as more crit damage, which is very, very good. And then to top it off, we have aspect of Retaliation. Since we are always fortified due to our Grizzly Rage, we get a massive damage mod. And on top of that, we have cooldown reduction, lucky hit chance for the obvious reasons that I explained. And then also the damage reduction we can add on it, that we can find, because we are pretty squished without all that damage reduction working in tandem, since we're not scaling any resistances. We are trying to circumvent that by all the damage reduction we're running. On top of that, we have the basic expected emeralds for the crit damage on the vulnerable. We have damage reduction on fortified, and then just basically more armor. It's very similar to all the popular tornado builds out there, except for the close damage mods can be changed, as well as certain aspects that facilitate tornado will now facilitate our lightning storm. It's pretty much interchangeable. If you get like a spare piece of gear here and there, you can also just switch from tornado or from lightning storm into tornado. If you want to do some like single target bossing, like Lilith runs or something, you could probably do that fairly quickly. Real quickly, for the spirit boons, the druid mechanic itself, we're going for a 3/4/4/3/4 wariness on the deer. We take avian wrath on the eagle, which totally doesn't look like a crow in game. You can also go with increased critical strike chance. If you find yourself having a little low crit, this can help you tie you over until your gear improves. Otherwise, crit damage is wonderful. We take Calamity to increase the duration of our Grizzly Rage. Then we have Masochistic, because this gives us a lot of healing. So much healing. And then also Calm Before the Storm, which allows us to reduce the cooldown on the Grizzly Rage by quite a bit. The more lucky hit we have, the more this procs, the more we have a high uptime of Grizzly Rage, which is very, very important. Let's talk a little bit about the skill tree. We take 2 points here as travel points together with Storm Strike. In a perfect world, we don't have to use Storm Strike at all, except for the occasional damage reduction. So we don't have to spend into a 3rd point. We do pick up 5 points in Lightning Storm. That is our primary source of damage. I would recommend Primal Lightning Storm. However, if you find yourself having enough lucky hit to trigger immobilizing effects, and you just want to farm harder, or you're just doing cheesy content, you can do the additional Lightning Strike for better clear, but it's entirely up to you. We do work our way to Wild Impulses for more core skill multiplicative damage. Only 1 point in Heart of the Wild, because we don't care too much about that. 1 point in Predatory Instincts, and then 3 points in Digigrade Gate, which allows us for more movement speed, which is very, very lovely. Going down to the defenses, we do pick up Ancestral Fortitude to give us 3 points of Vigilance, which gives us damage reduction when we are using Cyclone Armor, which we pick up with the slow as well as Preserving Cyclone Armor for just more passive damage reduction, together with Bloodhowl, Enhanced Bloodhowl, as well as Innate Bloodhowl. Now, if you find yourself not needing the Spirit Gain, I like it personally because it allows me to maintain my Lightning Strike in between packs, because that would require Spirit, and if there's nobody to attack, it does cost Spirit, doesn't generate Spirit. So having this allows you to have that be maintained easier. But if you are able to be a little bit more sweaty, you can drop this point and put it elsewhere, like maybe getting more damage further down the line. Or maybe you could just switch Bloodhowl out and get yourself Earthen Bulwark, which is very clever because you have another source of Unstoppable if you don't have enough cooldown reduction yet, which is very nice. Or if you run Dark Howl, you can use Debilitating Roar as a werewolf skill and get the benefits of Fortify and Heal, or maybe Slow here, which is of course the PvP option if that's your cup of tea. We do pick up 3 points of Nature Reach because, as you can see, it's a massive source of damage multiplier, especially if they are immobilized or knocked back, both of which we can provide, as well as Slow because of the poison crit that we can create. Speaking of poison crit, here poison enemies are slowed. Critical strikes with werewolf skills deal poison, or it makes the enemy poisoned, and all our storm skills are considered werewolf skills, so that's always active. And then we also have additional damage taken, which is why Envenom is such a wonderful trait. That's also why we pick it up on our amulet. The skills themselves, we have Hurricane, speaks for itself, get the slow effect as well as less damage, very tanky. We also pick up a couple of passive. This gives us a bunch of vulnerable. Since we don't run tornadoes, we need a source of consistent vulnerability, and since we are lucky hit base, elemental exposure is lovely for that. We pick up 1 point in Endless Tempest. We pick up 3 points in Bad Omen just for more damage. You can drop this if you want to. And then you can still pick up 3 points of Electric Shock, which is what I would recommend. But if you don't want more damage, you can instead then perhaps put it in Circle of Life, which allows you to get more healing. So if you are tanky enough, you can get more damage. If you feel squishy, you can perhaps invest in more tank. Just as long as you get 3 points in Defiance, because that's just wonderful damage, as well as 3 points in Natural Disaster, you'll be assuredly fine. Indeed, you can take 2 points in Circle of Life instead of the Bad Omen. That's entirely up to you. The wonderful Grizzly Rage. We finish that off with the Prime as well as Supreme. And then we pick up the Capstone. Now, once again, if you don't want to run Earth and Might, you can drop the Aspect and you can maybe pick up Perfect Storm or Lupine. I've even heard people talk a little bit about Ursine's Strength due to the Healthy mod, but that's entirely up to you. I prefer Earth and Might, and that's what I would recommend. So allow me to show you my Paragon tree, which is mostly inspired by the popularized tornado Paragon trees, simply adjusted for lightning strike as well as my personal preference. So if it looks familiar, you know why. In the beginning board, we add a exploit glyph, which is very, very common. We do pick up all the rare notes, the prime, the tenacity, as well as the impel. Of course, it's a travel note. I do pick up the resolve right here. My plan here is perhaps to drop it once I have all my defenses on my gear sorted. Until then, I'll keep it around. It's willpower, it's free, it's 1 point. I'm okay with it. We go up into the next board, which is Lust for Carnage, which allows us to get another glyph, Undaunted, giving us a bunch of Fortify, bunch of damage reduction as well. Now, however, if you don't have a full Paragon board yet, you probably want to put in Werewolf here and adjust accordingly. But Undaunted is really, really tanky. If you want to have more tank, I would recommend just going with that. We travel upwards to pick up Lust for Carnage, which is a big part of our spirit maintenance, as well as the Ferocity note right here as well, very close by. We pick up Feral here for free, pretty much, as well as the Regenerative note as we travel to the left side. You could consider picking up the Wild's Call through all this attack speed, but I don't think it's necessary. But you could drop Ferocity for it and then go with the Wild's Call if you prefer more attack speed. It's more of a tornado thing, and I think this is better for Lightning Strike, but it's entirely up to you. On the left, we have Heightened Malice. It's a bit of a travel board, but once we do, we obtain Heightened Malice, which is massive damage in those AoE situations. Incredible stuff for us. As well as a little bit more poison resistance and life, which is just nice. Still wondering if I should get more dexterity to make this work, or just more damage reduction. I think more damage reduction is better. We travel through some magic notes as well as Poisoned Condition. It's just pretty easy because we have to travel through that anyway. In the glyph, we put Fang and Claw. And then we pick up all the magic notes, which is very, very lovely. As well as the Nature Born, which is more damage reduction on enemies, or from enemies that are poisoned. And we are poisoning all enemies we are critting. So it's very lovely. Then we have a split. We go to the left to pick up Ancestral Guidance. So we can pick up Ancestral Guidance, obviously, which is a massive damage mod. But also we pick up Reclamation for Spirit on Kill. And then with some excess points at the end, we might even pick up some additional Spirit on Kill to maintain that easy brain dead farming of the lower dungeons. Because we can just kill and move, kill and move, kill and move. It's very, very simple. If you notice that you don't need the Spirit, because you have more lucky hit or you're just a better gamer, you can just drop these points and put them into damage mods. Maybe you can find some other rare nodes you can pick instead. But until then, we go up ourselves, pick up Earth and Sky, as well as Hubris right here together with Stormcaller, which is basically just a travel node. We do pick an entire point down here because it's damage reduction from vulnerable enemies, and most of the enemies we fight are vulnerable, and it gets enhanced by, well, the Earth and Sky glyph, so why not? On the left, we go up through Deluge, more crit, damage, which is very lovely. We've got the legendary Thunderstruck right here for a massive damage mod. And we also pick up Tempest. With excess points at the end, we pick up additional vulnerable damage, which is just a wonderful damage mod. As we know, vulnerable damage is incredible. And through Lightning Resilience with more life and lightning resistance, which is not really important, but it's a travel node, we go up so we can pick up Bulwark for more damage reduction and Fortify generation, which helps smooth out the Grizzly. On the right side, we have our final glyph with the Werewolf, which is just a wonderful glyph in general. More damage reduction, and it allows us to also pick up the Nature's Will, which is more damage, as well as more life and willpower. So overall, that's kind of what it looks like. Remember, the glyphs have to be level 15 to get the increased radius. Prior to that, you may have to spec different to make their passives, their secondary passives active. But this is how my endgame Paragon board will look like. And I think I can still improve it based on improving my spirit maintenance and get these points sorted into better offensive nodes elsewhere. Who knows? but hopefully that gives you a bit of a direction. Either way, thank you all so much for watching this video. Once again, hit the like button, make sure to subscribe, and catch my live streams. If you have any questions or anything, I will be most likely able to answer them there, or leave a comment, who knows. Thank you so much for watching, have a good night, and I am out.